Hello, and welcome to this webinar in which I'm going to go over some of the home tests that you can take to support gut health and, find out how your gut is doing and perhaps finding out what you could do better in terms of gut health. And the important question, are they worth it? My name is Anna-Kaisa. I'm a registered dietitian and a yoga and meditation teacher. And I've been a dietitian for nearly 10 years, and I've had the privilege of taking care of a lot of different kinds of people, from babies to the elderly, and, almost every single diagnosis out there. But now I'm specializing in IBS because I find that it's so fascinating. And gut health, both of them are just so important for health and quality of life and well-being that I became really fascinated about promoting gut health, and this way promoting quality of life and preventing chronic illnesses. And of course, it's really exciting that as a yoga teacher, I can provide a more full package for gut health and IBS specifically, because there are a lot of practices in the yoga realm that helps to calm the gut-brain axis, and that's that mechanism that's behind IBS. But in any case, I've got a lot of quite a varied background, but now I'm really fully invested in IBS and gut health, and I have a private practice and I do telehealth appointments, so you can be in a lot of places in the world and I can help you out. And a little side note, trivia of me, I love volleyball. Not very tall, which was very unfortunate when I was growing up and I wanted to be a really good volleyball player, but in any case, I still love doing it, and other sports as well. And I also enjoy knitting and crocheting. So let's get started. So today we're going to talk about a bunch of different kinds of tests you can take at home and send out to a lab to be analyzed. We'll talk about microbiome tests, stool tests, talk about food sensitivity tests, home vitamin tests, genetic testing, and other things like that. So let's start with these stool tests. So just to start with, the microbes in your large intestine are just vital for overall health and definitely for gut health. And it makes perfect sense that we would want to find out what's in there. What is inhabiting the gut? What's living in there? Is the balance good? Are there microbes that are harming us? Are there enough of those microbes that are supporting our health and perhaps protecting us? And so, in theory, it's a really great idea to test the stool to see what microbes live in there. Because yes, the goal of any gut health dietitian or doctor is also to support your gut microbes, to make sure that your gut is in good balance in terms of what critters live in there. The theory is that when you find out what microbes living there, maybe you can do things slightly differently to help support the microbes that are maybe you need more support, and do things in a way that maybe reduce the number of harmful bacteria. And these tests are pretty numerous. There's quite a few different tests available, and they're pretty easy to do, right? You just take a stool sample and send it out. So in theory, quite interesting and exciting opportunity. But unfortunately, there are a lot of problems at this time with these tests. Of course, number one, they can be expensive. And so it is really, we all probably want to know whether it's worth it to send tests out, because, if it's multiple $100s and if there's no use, well, you might rather want to use that money somehow else, And the truth is, I would probably not spend my money on these tests because they are based on very, very, at this time, still very insufficient scientific evidence. For example, there is no generally and universally accepted definition for what is a healthy microbiome. We do not understand the microbiome that well at this time, even though the industry is putting a lot of money into this. We still don't know everything because it is so complex. It really is immensely complex area of study. So to claim that these companies know what you should have in your gut is very much preliminary. They really can't say that. There's not really enough evidence for that. The other big problem is that the results are often not specific at all. They're not accurate. They might be missing data. It's just, that is a really big problem. And here are a couple of examples that really, I hope, bring this point home. They took same stool sample and sent it to different labs, right? Different tests. And every single one came out with different results, right? So who do you trust? But what's worse is that there really is very poor reproducibility. You send the same stool. Basically, you take 3 different samples of the same stool, and you send all these 3 to the same lab, just as if it was 3 different samples, right? And even then, the result was different. You should have gotten the same result, but you didn't. So this is very concerning for the accuracy for these tests. So you send something out and you don't even know if it's giving you any accurate results. The other thing about the microbiome is that it changes even daily. You might have different composition and abundance of different things in your gut in the morning versus the evening, versus tomorrow, versus in a month, maybe in the next season. It all changes depending on what you ate, how you slept, you name it. So it's just one snapshot of one situation. So how useful is that? You took a test last month, but you're not there anymore. So what are you going to do with those results, right? And like I mentioned, the comparison is so completely, I don't want to say made up, but it's really the scientific proof is not good. It's, what are you comparing it to? There's really no good comparisons even. And there is a place for these tests, and the best place is in research. And I do hope that one day we do have better tests. But right now, I would not spend my money on them, especially since how much does it really change what you're going to do? You still want to be supporting your gut microbes with enough sleep, with exercise, with a healthy, fiber-rich diet, stress management, all these things. They still are important. You still want to keep doing those. So are these tests really going to change that? That's a little bit doubtful. So no, please don't spend our money on these tests until we really have something that we can trust. Another big kind of debated tests out there are these food intolerance tests. And they kind of try to see if a certain food might not be tolerated very well by your individual digestive system. And they're similar to allergies but different. So allergies are mediated by IgE antibodies, and this is your immune system that is responding. And the symptoms are typically rash or itching or redness, even breathing problems and anaphylaxis. So these symptoms can be life-threatening, and they start really quickly in minutes, maybe within 2 hours, and you might need only a minute amount of the protein that you're allergic to cause these very serious symptoms. Whereas food intolerances are not immune system mediated. They are typically some kind of gut symptoms like diarrhea or constipation or bloating or something like that, they're not dangerous for health. And they are very much dependent on how much of that food that you think you're intolerant to you're eating. Often a small amount is tolerated fine, and then only a bigger amount is problematic. One example could be lactose intolerance, and this intolerance is caused by a lack of enzyme in your digestive system, lactase. And in case you don't know, lactose intolerance happens if you don't have enough lactase and you're eating enough lactose, a milk sugar, you're drinking milk or eating yogurt or something like that. And then when you don't have enough lactase, a lot of that lactose is going to go on. It's not going to be digested or absorbed. It's going to keep going through the digestive system, and it ends up in the large intestine, where your bacteria certainly have enzymes to break that down, and that leads to bloating, gas, diarrhea, pain, these uncomfortable gut symptoms. And the thing about food intolerance is that it can be kind of hard to parse them apart from gut symptoms that are caused by other things. They start really slowly. It could take days before you see the effects. And the symptoms are very much similar to symptoms if you have a lot of stress. Stress causes gut symptoms. If you have a very low fiber diet, that can lead to intolerance type symptoms. So it's kind of hard to say what's causing what. And then, we have these tests. Someone has to develop these tests to try to find out if there is a true food intolerance. And again, this is a really great idea in theory, that you can just take some tests and see what foods you need to avoid, and then your gut symptoms are gone forever. Unfortunately, these IgG type food intolerance tests are not reliable, because IgG antibodies are sort of these memory antibodies. And in a nutshell, if you eat a food, you will get IgG antibodies in response to food. And this, to kind of emphasize, IgG does not mean necessarily that eating that food is bad, right? It doesn't mean that these food particles are causing leakiness of the gut necessarily. So it's basically just showing you, hey, you've eaten this food. I had a client a few years back who had taken that test, and it's not surprising that the favorite foods she was eating, I think it was almonds and broccoli or something like this, were showing up in the IgG test, because it's a memory antibody. It shows you what you've been eating. And then it's like, I have to stop eating these. But it doesn't mean that you have an intolerance. It means you've eaten these foods recently. And on top of that, these IgG tests are pretty, like I said, not accurate. There's a poor reproducibility. So, you take a test today, and it will have different results from the test you're going to take next week or, tomorrow. So it's not really reliable. Also, the, higher IgG numbers don't really connect well to symptoms, right? So you might have sky high IgG numbers and your gut is fine, or your gut is completely, keeping you on your toes, causing all kinds of symptoms, and your IgG numbers might be okay, right? So they don't connect very well. And the risk with these tests is that they can lead to unnecessary diet restrictions. And placebo effect is a pretty big one here as well to consider. And that's why I'm asking, what else is going on? When you are having a lot of symptoms, really think deeply, what is going on in my life? Am I sleeping well? Am I exercising? Am I taking care of myself? Am I really stressed? Am I really nervous about eating some foods? Because, all these things can lead to gut symptoms, and they might have nothing to do with intolerances. And if you really want to find out, the best way to find out if you have a food intolerance is to do an elimination diet of that food, and preferably with a healthcare professional who knows what they're doing. So, with lactose, for example, you might not, you might avoid lactose for a period of time. And if you improve, if your symptoms go away, then you try that, lactose again. You drink milk or yogurt, whatever it is, and see if you get symptoms. If you get symptoms, that's a pretty good indicator that maybe lactose is something that you are intolerant to. But if the symptoms did not get better when you eliminated that the food particle that you think you're intolerant to, or if the symptoms didn't come back, then you're probably not intolerant to that food. So I would, again, not spend my money on these because they might end up doing more harm than good. Diet restrictions are never a good idea, just in case. They can really lead to worse problems than if you were just trying to keep your diet as varied as possible. I forgot to mention this with the microbiome tests. There is some of the tests, they give you results, and while, I said you can't really necessarily know whether they're even accurate, but they give you guidelines of what you should be eating and what you shouldn't be eating. And again, if you kind of start following those guidelines, you might be causing more harm because you're avoiding healthy foods and fibers, and keeping your diet as varied as possible is so much better for your microbiome than really narrowing it down. And like I said, these guidelines are not, I don't know what they're based on, because I actually approached one company that does microbiome tests and tried to understand based on what are they suggesting for you to not eat certain foods and eat certain foods. Like, do they have actually studies where they see that carrots increase lactobacilli, or you get the idea. And they didn't have them. So I really am not sure what are they basing these on, and it could be pretty arbitrary. And I can't recommend following guidance from either from microbiome tests or IgG tests. What about testing your vitamin and mineral status? Would that be helpful? And in a way, yes, it's a good idea that we definitely want to make sure that we're getting all the vitamins and minerals we need, that we have plenty of those in our bodies for us to be well. If the body is not getting all the nutrients it needs, your gut also can't be completely healthy. So in a way, these can be useful. Some gut illnesses could lead to nutrient deficiencies like IBD, perhaps SIBO. But the problem with these tests is that they're not diagnostic, and often the result is just either high, low, or normal, right? It doesn't give you an actual number. And so that means that it's hard to know what do you do with this. If it says, let's say your vitamin D is low, okay, well, I need to take a vitamin D supplement, but how much? And this is what you would need a professional for, and also a more precise lab reading where we can actually see where you're at. And, to make a real plan that doesn't go overboard with those, with repleting those nutrients, you definitely need a dietitian, perhaps, or another healthcare professional to help you. So to me, the most useful these tests can be when if you take one and you see, okay, it's abnormal, it's either high or low, and you can take this to your doctor then to request an official lab testing to be done, so that you can find out more accurately where you're at with these nutrients. But I wouldn't use these tests alone to guide my decisions completely. So can be useful, but with some caveats. These days, science is going forward by leaps and bounds, and there is the science of nutrigenetics, genetic tests that point out predisposition for different nutrient-related risks, including vitamin deficiencies, or the risk for osteoporosis, and so on and so on. And I actually do sell one of these tests from Nutrigenomics, and of course, I really care about using tests that are actually useful, and I will give you my full disclosure. I did one test myself to really understand how the test works, and I can't say that it changed everything in my life. It definitely pointed out some things that I was surprised about. Let's say I found out that I have maybe a slightly higher than average risk of osteoporosis and of vitamin B12 deficiency. And while it doesn't change necessarily your nutrient needs, like I don't need more B12 than your average person, but what that means is that I need to be more careful about not getting deficient, because it happens more easily for me than to someone else. And I am a vegetarian, so I might get a little bit less B12. So I want to be kind of extra mindful of that. So my 2 cents on these genetic tests is that they can be helpful, especially in motivating you to make changes to support your health. They can be especially helpful for kind of getting more information about what kind of diet might support weight loss the best, if that's what you're looking to do, lose weight. There's a histamine test, there's a celiac gene test, but they're not sort of, they don't change everything. For celiac disease, you definitely want to get an actual tissue transglutaminase test, because the gene test doesn't really, even if it's positive that you have a celiac gene, doesn't mean that you have it, and you want to find out for sure with a better test. And yeah, you can buy one from me, if you're interested in finding out more specifically your genetic predispositions. But I will say that they're most helpful for, general wellness promotion and maybe for weight loss. But it is interesting. So if you are curious, it's fine. It's Nutrigenomics sells tests only through healthcare professionals, so they're making sure that you're never left alone with the analysis and the results. So I like this company for that. But you can do without. Well, what tests are helpful? And there's a list of these. I already kind of went over the vitamins. You want to do the celiac test for sure if you're having gut symptoms that are really long-term and bothersome, and the genetic test is not enough. You want to do the tissue transglutaminase test. You want to do a CalPro also to rule out IBD. You could take some breath tests. Those can be also home tests. There are some question about how accurate these breath tests are. So again, with all these tests, you want to always have them taken with the referral of a doctor who's also going to follow up and look at the lab results and analyze them and give you guidance on what to do next. And at the end of the day, what kind of IBS care do you need? You don't necessarily need these tests. I mean, some of them you do, like I mentioned, those useful tests. The doctor will decide what you need, but how you support your gut health can change everything for you. And it's not one thing, it's all the things. Everything affects everything. That's my motto, that I've really just doing research on IBS. This is just what you kind of understand very quickly, that everything that's going on in your life can be contributing to your symptoms. Your diet, of course, what you eat affects your microbes. It affects the inflammation status in the gut. It affects the fuel available to your gut lining cells, and etc., and so on and so on. lifestyle. Are you sleeping enough? Are you exercising? Are you being social? Are you going out to nature? All these things. How's your gut-brain axis doing? This is now the definition of IBS, and it's now thought to be a problem of the gut-brain interaction. So if your gut and brain are communicating poorly, like with a bad internet connection, things can go bad, and it can become really a long-term problem. And everything we talked about today already are helpful for the gut-brain axis. Taking care of your microbes in many different ways is important for gut health and IBS, and you always want to individualize everything. So, that a lot of things, I recommend to many people, but at the end of the day, the small tweaks are made based on the individual to get the best results. And I also really encourage, I know you're listening to my webinar and you might be thinking that I'm trying to sell things. And yeah, of course, I'm a professional. I'm trying to make a living here as well. But it just kind of makes me sad that so many people just suffer in silence. They have these gut issues and they maybe go to a doctor. Maybe they don't get quite the help they wanted to get. Maybe the issue is not so bad that they're not really talking to anyone. And then for years and years, they go on with these gut issues that, I can't ever promise that I'm going to solve every problem, but there's so much you can do to support your health and your gut that it just makes me sad that we don't ask for help enough. And a good place to start, you can go to my website, akwise.co, and book a free call, a 30-minute call where we can discuss your situation and kind of try to see where you're stuck and what can you do better to go forward. And then, of course, I have this very low-cost ebook, 7 Non-Negotiable Habits for IBS Relief. And I compiled this ebook based on this group program I did a little while back, where I had 15 of the most important steps for gut health. And I took the 7 most crucial ones that I believe everybody needs to have in place to build a really solid foundation. Because if you don't have a solid foundation with these gut health habits, it's really hard to move the needle. It's really hard to improve your symptoms with other things, right? So this is like a quick guide to building a really solid foundation. So I can recommend it very warmly. It's very low cost, and it's really just the 7 most important things to have in place before anything else. And now I want to thank you for having been here, listening to me talking really fast and going over these tests. And so to sum up, save your money. Don't take these tests. Go to a doctor to make sure you have the right diagnosis, and otherwise seek help from professionals so that you can get the relief you want more quickly. Thanks for being here, and I will see you in the next one.